Thank you very much. Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Nicoli. I am an associate professor at the University of Nicosia's Department of Communications. And as mentioned, I will be moderating today's panel on the role of the media in a democracy. And it should come as no surprise, of course, that the media have a central role to play in any democracy, with some of the main themes of a democracy being freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and even freedom of assembly, all having a central role in terms of the connection between the media and democracy. However, as we proceed with democratic deficits, and we see this around the world, I think it's important that we are able to reevaluate this very urgent subject of the role of the media. And I think we have an excellent panel here today in order to do so. So without any further ado, I think we should start, and I would like to give the floor to Hervé in order to give us his presentation. Hervé, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I think, I guess everyone know Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Yes, of course. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who wrote, "Transparency is the virtue of beautiful souls." But does anyone in this room know that man? No, of course not. His name is Serge Moati. It's a famous French documentary filmmaker. Serge Moati once said in an interview that, in his view, transparency was the opposite of democracy. As you can observe on social networks, for instance, unlimited transparency can lead to surveillance and control of everyone by everyone, the very definition of totalitarianism. According to Sergio Moati, on the contrary, it is the right to a secret garden for each and every one of us that underpins the very principle of freedom. A principle that is worth remembering in a connected and open world like ours. But, sorry Serge, what is true for the individual citizens is not true for the institutions that work for the common good, and especially when they are public. In France, one of the historic cradles of democracy, this is the case of the Arcom, Regulatory Authority for Audiovisual and Digital Communication. A board made up of a chairman, Roch-Olivier Mestre, you can see in the center of the picture, the tall guy, and 8 members, of whom I have the honor of being one, assisted in its task by an administration of 400 people. Considering that freedom of expression and communication for the audiovisual media was too important to be left in the hands of the political sphere, lawmakers nearly 4 decades ago decided to entrust it to an independent public authority, the Arcom. Article 1 of the July 29, 1982 law on the freedom of audiovisual communication proclaimed that audiovisual communication in France is free. Safeguarding such a cornerstone of democracy necessitates complete independence and absolute transparency. So, how can we ensure both? And how do we protect this freedom? Freedom of expression is an integral part of French democracy. Article 11 of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizens in 1789, at the time of the Revolution, states the free communications of thoughts and opinions is one of the most precious rights of man. Every citizen may therefore speak, write and print freely, except that he may be held responsible for the abuse of this freedom in the cases determined by the law. No one has ever written better, clearer and more concisely about what freedom of expression and communication should be. Article 10 of the 1950 European Convention on Human Rights spells out this principle, as does a famous ruling by the European Court of Human Rights in 1976, freedom of expression applies not only to information or ideas that are favorably received or regarded as inoffensive or as a matter of indifference, but also to those that offend, shock, or disturb the state of any section of the population. This is the spirit of pluralism, tolerance, and openness, without which there can be no democratic society. These principles are enshrined in the French Constitution and numerous pieces of legislation. As far as Arcom's remit is concerned, September 30th, 1986 law on freedom of communication concentrates most of the legislation. Arcom has a very broad remit, ensuring the pluralistic expression of views and opinions, honesty, independence, and pluralism of information, fair representation of the cultural diversity of society, equality between men and women, pluralism of the media landscape itself, and more. So, how does it work? The first role of the broadcasting regulator is to allocate terrestrial frequencies to radio and television stations that apply for them. These operators are selected on various factors, including their contribution of original content to the existing media landscape, in order to provide listeners and viewers with the widest possible range of choices. This is what media pluralism is all about. The broadcasting license granted by Arcom is free of charge, but comes with contractual commitments. These commitments relate to all aspects of respect of pluralism in the representation of society from a political or cultural point of view. In cases of non-compliance with these commitments, or with the law itself, Arcom has the power to impose sanctions ranging from warnings and fines to the outright withdrawal of broadcasting licenses. For years, Arcom has been dubbed by journalists as a broadcasting policeman. A policeman who is there to punish, if necessary, but who is above all there to protect freedom. Do you want me to prove it? In 2022, Arcom received more than 48,000 alerts which can be submitted by any citizen, but at the same time imposed only 9 sanctions. Only 9. Why? Because Arcom spends more time explaining to complainants that freedom of expression allows a great deal of speech or behavior on air, including embarrassing or shocking behavior. It is also important to note that Arcom only intervenes after a potential breach with the program publisher and the publisher alone, who is responsible for what is put on air, and not with a journalist or presenter, which may be a matter for the courts. This is how Arcom ensures, for example, whether during the election period or not, that all political parties can express themselves fairly in the audiovisual media, allowing citizens to form opinions. This is democracy. But in the same way, a few months ago, Arcom imposed a fine of 3.5 million euros on a television channel whose famous presenter had copiously insulted a member of parliament during a live broadcast. However, in an age marked by artificial intelligence, deepfakes, foreign interference in electoral processes, and the widespread manipulation of information, the media world is evolving and the regulator's remit is evolving with it. Its scope now extends to platforms and internet social networks, addressing issues such as online hate speech and false information. France was also a forerunner legislating against false information on social networks, passing the law against the manipulation of information in 2018, and then against online hatred with the law reinforcing the principles of the Republic in 2021, just before the European Digital Services Act considerably enhanced the framework. In France, Arcom is responsible for its implementation. Another major European work in progress is the EMFA, a supranational law applying to all the countries of the European Union, protecting the freedom of the media and journalists against political interference. European regulators, including Arcom, are contributing to this promising work, which will be in the European Parliament hands on next Tuesday. While discussions within Arcom's board are secret, its deliberations are public and transparent. Arcom acts under the public eye. By publishing all its decisions, Arcom acts under the eye of the national representatives to whom it reports on its actions through hearings by the Parliament. And Arcom acts under the eye and control of the judge. In this case, the State Council, a kind of Supreme Court of public law in France, which ensures that Arcom takes decisions in proper application of the law, of course, in order to protect citizens. So as you can see, Arcom's powers and missions are huge and are exercised transparently. But how can the authority's independence itself be guaranteed? By ensuring the independence of the 9 board members, like me. The process begins with the appointment of board members, which involves 5 different political and legal institutions. These members come from diverse professional backgrounds, including lawyers, engineers, senior civil servants, journalists, like me, producers, and more. The board is made up of equal numbers of men and women. So the President of the Republic nominates the chairman of Arcom. 3 members are proposed by the President of the Senate, and 3 members by the President of the National Assembly. All these institutions, political institutions, have distinct political affiliations. Regarding the legal bodies, 1 member is appointed by the State Council and another one by the Cassation Court, kind of Supreme Court for civil justice. At the board, it's 1 member, 1 vote. In other words, influencing an Arcom decision would require convincing not 1 or 2, but at least 5 councillors, making it a challenging task. Robert Badinter, the father of the abolition of the death penalty in France, said independence means having nothing to fear and nothing to hope for. Each councillor is appointed for a 6-year term, which cannot be revoked, but is also non-renewable. 6 years, and bye-bye. So there's no point in threatening councillors with withdrawal of their mandates. It's not possible. Nor is it possible to promise to reappoint them in exchange for favors. During their office, members are subject to strict ethical rules. No gift and no invitations in excess of 60 euros. All members are bound by professional secrecy and business confidentiality. In order to guarantee the integrity of the board members, 2 independent institutions keep a close eye on their professional expenses and their personal assets. When an Arcom member's term of office comes to an end, he or she is still subject to the rules of professional conduct. For the next 3 years, he is still bound by professional secrecy. He may not work directly or indirectly for a company that is regulated by Arcom. As a former councillor, he may not make any public statements, like today, for example. Any attempt to assert his status as a former member of Arcom could be construed as influence peddling, punishable by a fine of 200,000 euros or even 3 years imprisonment. This is very strict. All these constraints obviously do not make life any easier for an Arcom councillor or former councillor, but they shield the members of the board from any risk of pressure and guarantee the integrity of the institution and its independence. It's a small price, in fact, to pay compared to what's at stake, the commitment required for Arcom to serve citizens. Ultimately, it is only to them that the institution is accountable for its actions, to protect them and to enable fair and honest debate to enliven and keep democracy alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hervé. I think it's safe to say that the European Union is one of the bastions in forms of regulation around the world, and France, of course, is at the center of this. So looking at the level of transparency and the models that you adopt, I think is very important for us here in Cyprus, especially since there is so much copycat reform and regulation around the world. So really what you do in France probably is at the forefront of what many other countries do. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you very much. I must say that, well, thank you for what you told about France, but I think that in this world today, with the big issues we have, and especially with network platforms, social networks, we can be alone in our country. It's a worldwide issues, and we have to discuss with everybody, and that's important. What is done in all Europe, and the talks with every regulators.
Sure, absolutely. Let's move on. What we've done is we've clustered the discussion a bit, so we continue within the framework of regulation and policy. And I'd like to pass the floor now to Dr. Antigoni Themistokleous from the Cyprus Radiotelevision Authority. Antigoni.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And thank you to the organizers for inviting the Cyprus Radiotelevision Authority to participate and discuss such a burning issue, because definitely democracy and media are both fundamental to our societies today. Inviting the CRTA, I think it also indicates the role that independent regulation, media regulation, has and should have in liberal democracies. So quite often the public considers that media regulation is only about impositions, restrictions on freedom of expression of journalists, constraints, and exerting power on media institutions and journalists. Well, coming from the regulatory realm, this is definitely not our reality and not our mode of thinking. We consider media institutions as our closest partner, our most valuable partner, with whom we share common objectives and common goals, and protecting freedom of expression and enhancing democracy are definitely some of the most fundamental goals and objectives. So I have nothing to add to what my French colleague analyzed just before. Definitely France is a world speech, free speech champion, and I have great inspiration to the French society on such an achievement. Well, you are always an example, a good example, and an example of how vocal regulators can be in protecting freedom of expression. So I will therefore focus on another aspect of policymaking, and I would like to talk about media literacy, which again is unbreakably linked with how democracy can be enhanced and how we can protect and empower citizens to enjoy their rights in democratic realms. So my very ambitious goal is that by the end of this session, I will persuade you that media regulation is not only about restrictions, it's rather socially oriented, society-centered, and what it seeks to do is to empower citizens to enjoy their rights in expressing their opinions openly and without fear, and how to be active citizens. So media literacy is definitely a key theme for 21st century policymakers, and asks policymakers to rethink regulation, media regulation in particular, in terms of both the regulatory objectives and the delivery modes of regulation, if we want to ensure the effectiveness of media regulation. So in this context, what we are asked to do is to reshape media regulation, to pay focus and attention to citizens and to consumers as well, not only to on producers. So media literacy is understood as the ability to access and analyze media content, the media messages in any form, but it is mostly about our skills, the skills of every single citizen to understand, to evaluate, to produce, to understand, and to evaluate with a critical eye any kind of media representations. So what is more difficult is how we implement this abstract policy issue and how we translate it into enforceable reality. So in Cyprus Radiotelevision Authority, we decided that we cannot develop media literacy levels in Cypriot society, which is one of our legal mandate. So this can be done only through cooperations and collaborations. So in the beginning, that is 10 years ago, we developed certain lesson plans, and we introduced these workshops for students in primary and secondary educations. We developed the lesson plans in cooperation with the Pedagogical Institute of the Ministry of Education, and this is one of our closest partners as well in this area of developing and upgrading the media literacy levels in the Republic of Cyprus. So we offer workshops to all educational establishments in Cyprus. The workshops focus on different topics, such as how we analyze and we understand advertisements, because advertising is integral to media institutions today. So we educate students and we try to guide them. We never provide answers to students. We cultivate their willingness and their ability to think and to develop their own mode of thinking around media advertising in terms of how the creators develop their content, what are the points of view and the opinions that are highlighted in media content, and what are the points of view that are marginalized. We have other workshops that focus on criteria of newsworthiness and how we analyze news production. So it's important for us to teach students that news cannot be considered outside of context. So we teach them how we evaluate newsworthiness. There are also other workshops seeking to tackle disinformation. So it's very important to educate students to understand and to recognize disinformation, misinformation, fake news. The terms are not the same. They cannot be used interchangeably. So it's very important to teach students to recognize indices of misinformation, disinformation, to definitely reject and not reshare fake news on their social media. Another collaboration that Cyprus Radiotelevision Authority developed in the context of promoting media literacy is our cooperation with the Mediterranean Digital Media Observatory, which is part of the European Digital Media Observatory. And the Mediterranean Digital Media Observatory operates as the regional hub in the Mediterranean region, covering Cyprus, Greece, and Malta in an attempt to combat disinformation. So this also can prevent society from any harms, from the harms that misinformation causes to society. So we definitely believe that regulation is not only about restrictions. Regulation can be seen as empowering citizens to enjoy their rights, their human rights, in a media converged landscape that we experienced today. And I would be very pleased to answer your questions on this. I don't want to talk more, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antigoni. I think it's fair to say that probably one of the most important tools in fighting the corrosive effects of democracy is disinformation, is media literacy.
Exactly, because through this we believe that it's only we definitely cannot control or monitor. We don't like the word control. We cannot monitor the content that is produced. There is abundance of content out there. So it's only if we educate everyone and every single individual to be able to recognize, to understand what is fake, what is true. So yes, and this also illustrates how media regulation cannot be considered in passive terms. It's not something static, it's something dynamic, it's something that reflects our reality. And if we want media regulation to effectively and efficiently address the challenges, we should invest in these media literacy initiatives.
Thank you very much. Turning now to Christophoros Christophi, who is a lawyer and also the host of a very excellent podcast, Legal Matters, which you should all subscribe to. Christophoros.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christophoros Christophi, as has already been said. I'm a lawyer, and I host in the last 3-4 years a podcast called Legal Matters. Initially, it started as a law-related podcast, but over the years it developed, and we moved into other areas like social issues, economic issues, and of course, the role of media in Cyprus. So my contribution in this discussion will be from another angle, and I will try to give you another perspective. First of all, we must acknowledge that in Cyprus we have a problem as regards the independency of the media. In Cyprus we do not have independent media in the sense that there is a strong interconnection and interrelation between the media and politics and the political parties. Last May, at the last session of Parliament, we had the following incident. In Cyprus, we have the Cyprus Radio and Television Law that set up, amongst others, the Radiotelevision Authority that Antigoni comes from, and she spoke before. That law provided that in order to have a license for a Pan-Cyprian television station and a Pan-Cyprian radio station, there was a limit on the number of shares that each physical person was entitled to have. So let's say for Alpha TV, which is a Pan-Cyprian television station, there was the limit that you could have maximum 4 shareholders, and each shareholder could only have 25% shares in each. This has been the situation from 1998 till 2023. Now, what happened in May, an MP, Panikos Leonidou, that comes from the Democratic Party, he filed an amendment, a bill to amend the law, and the law was amended, and it now allows for majority shareholding in the Pan-Cyprian television and radio stations. So whereas before you needed to have at least 4 shareholders in such a station, after the amendment, that changed altogether. Now, my point is this: I am not necessarily in favor or against the amendment itself, because the previous state of affairs was problematic in the sense that the owners of the media did not disclose their real identity because they had to have 4 shareholders, so they appointed nominee persons in most of the cases. Since more than one person in Cyprus controlled more than one media. For example, if you take Sigma, it has Radio Proto, it's Sigma Television, they have newspapers, they have all sorts of things, whereas strictly speaking, they couldn't, the owners couldn't have all these outlets together. My point is that this amendment was passed without having any public dialogue about it. Nobody knew about it. The law changed in the last session of Parliament, and one wonders, in a democratic society, shouldn't we have a public dialogue about who owns the media? Under what circumstances can the shareholding change, and whether it is permissible in a democratic society to have one person to control 100% a pan-Cyprian radio station or a television station. For example, you heard before that in France, the members of Arcom are appointed for only a 6-year term, and they cannot be appointed again, and there is a reason for that. You don't want concentration of power. You don't want people to serve for many years, that this will lead to abuse and so forth. And yet, in Cyprus, we changed the law. We gave the media owners the right to control 100% a TV or a radio station, and nobody knows about it. I'm sure that most of you here didn't know. So the fact that there was no public dialogue and no discussion by the media itself, the reporters, the journalists, they write all about everything in the newspapers and in the magazines and in whatever, but about this matter, about who controls the media, there was no article, no question to anyone, and it was passed in a hidden way, I would say, so that there wouldn't be any discussion, and so that the people wouldn't know. And because this amendment serves primarily the current owners of the big radio and television stations in Cyprus. And I say that disclosing that some of them are my clients, 1 or 2, but this has nothing to do with it. So my number 1 point is that we have a problem. We do not have an independent media. There is a strong interrelation between the politicians, especially those that are in power, with the media. And that's why this is one of the reasons that in Cyprus there is a heavy reliance of the public to other sources of information, like the social media. There was, last week, a reporter published a new poll about the sources of information of the Cypriot citizens. Newspapers are, I think, in the last position with 9%. Cypriots receive the information and the news from television, number 1, and number 2, the social media. And the other conventional mass media come 3rd, 4th, 5th, and so forth. So I think we need to acknowledge this problem. And if I have another couple of minutes, 1 minute, I would like to mention another point. We are discussing today about the role of the media in a democracy, and we all have in mind the mass media of the last century. The mass media of the last century are the televisions, the radios, the newspapers, and magazines. This is not the situation today. In 10 years from now, there won't be any newspapers, there won't be any magazines, and everything will be digital, and everything will be online. And for this scenery, there is no regulation in place. Even the European Convention of Human Rights, the freedom of expression, the limitations to the freedom of expression, the laws that are around the EU member states about the control and regulation of the media, they were made for the media of the last century. There is in the European Union the Digital Services Act, which is a type of modern legislation at the EU level which tries to regulate social media in terms of content, in terms of responsibilities and so forth. But this is not enough. And we see that every citizen today is a journalist. There was a person, Christos, when I came in, that has a TikTok channel. I don't know if he's here. Christos is 17 years old. He's a student, and he has a TikTok channel with 10,000 followers. Christos is a journalist. Christos is an example of someone that is a source of information for others. Currently, TikTok is not regulated in Cyprus. And it's very difficult to regulate it, this form of social media globally. So given the fact that every person that has a phone and has a Facebook account or a Twitter account is a journalist and can, here he is, Yasu Christo. So we are talking about a new scenery. It is something unprecedented in human history for many centuries, what we are going to see in the coming years. And we need to discuss amongst ourselves and in a state level and European level and global level how we are going to move forward with this new scenery that everyone is a journalist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christophoros. I have to say, in my class, when I speak with my students, they tell me they are not on Facebook anymore because Facebook is considered legacy media now. So, let alone the legacy media of the past. So, I think you're absolutely right. And probably at the core of your talk is also the theme of this event, which is transparency, which of course is very important. So, thank you very much. Moving on. Yes, of course. Oh, we can now.
Because Christophoros mentioned the regulation and also the regulation of the digital environment. So, of course, there is huge discrepancy. And since Ms. Kotziamani is not here, I know because we cooperate in our working professional environment. So Ms. Kotziamani strongly believes, and I agree with her, that there is discrepancy in terms of the regulation of the broadcasting, let's say, and of the digital environment. For example, if something is broadcast, radio or TV, then they know that it's the Radiotelevision Authority which takes action. On the other hand, identically the same content can be uploaded online and nothing can happen. So, of course, this is not an ideal situation. But the Audiovisual Media Services Directive of 2010, and in particular, the latest revision of 2018, introduces elements of regulation of the online sphere, and in particular of the video sharing platforms. Of course, it's another discussion of what constitutes a video sharing platform, and this is clearly described in this directive. The directive was transposed into Cyprus, into our regulation in December 2021. So since 21st of December 2021, video sharing platforms under our jurisdictions under our jurisdiction and under the jurisdiction of all our colleagues in the other EU member states, are regulated in certain terms. They are regulated in terms of the protection of minors, of course, from harmful material, and in terms of the protection of the general public from from user-generated content, audiovisual commercial communication, which promotes terrorism, race speech, and anything, terrorism, race speech, and hate speech, thanks, hate speech. So there are minimum levels of regulation online. Of course, this is not adequate if we want to ensure a level playing field for online media and, let's say, offline media, which is the mainstream.
Thank you, thank you. Does anyone want to respond to that, if you'd like?
I would like to say something about this because Christophoros said that everybody now is a journalist. This is dangerous. Not everybody can be a journalist. And I think that here now we must talk about the professional journalists because they are regulated. They have to abide to certain rules and we can trust them that they follow those rules. The influencers or people who spread the news through TikTok, no offense, okay, or broadcasts, whatever they say, they don't have to, they have no consequences. So also the audience has to be very careful to what who they follow and what kind of news they get from TikTok. They have to, I mean, they are not professional journalists that they spread this news, so we have to be cautious.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a journalist's remit is to work for the public interest, of course, and that is not the same as what an influencer does. And of course with ethical rules, so they are restricted within a different framework. But I think, Marianna, what you've done is you've given us a good sort of shift towards another area, moving a bit away from the regulatory concept, to look more at issues of press and press freedom and issues that concern news media and journalism more generally. So I'd like to give the floor now maybe to Evie Phillips, sorry, who is from the Cyprus News Agency.
Hello, everybody. I'm Evie Phillips. I work for the Cyprus News Agency. And first of all, if I was going to speak in general about the role of the media in democracy, but actually Christophoros spoke about some a survey that was presented on Wednesday, and obviously he must have read the Reporter publication. I mean, I didn't actually take all of the findings. I just selected a few that I found quite interesting. But just to mention that it was actually an annual survey that the Cyprus Union of Journalists conducts. It was done by Cyprus Network Company, and it was in a sample of among 1,000 participants, just so that we know what we're talking about. And what I found quite interesting, I mean, obviously Christophoros already spoke about the print media being very low in the interest of the public, so it was about 9%, you were correct. I mean, that's not something new. We all know that print is diminishing, and it has been evident from the fact that a lot of newspapers have chosen, or some newspapers already, big in publication, here and abroad, have chosen to only have Sunday editions, for example, and they've gone digital for the rest of the time. I mean, who would have thought that The Independent would no longer be published in print? But there you go, this has happened, and it's not something, it's something that happened a few years ago. But basically what I found quite interesting is the fact that a large number of participants in the survey said that they believed social media were the source of fake news in Cyprus. So it was about 60% of participants, which was quite high. And to me, at least, that gave an optimistic note. It shows that the people are actually aware that there is an infiltration of fake news from sources that are not to be trusted. So at least for me, that was good. Yes, Christophoros was right in pointing out that a lot of people, more and more people, are also reading foreign press or the Greek press instead of only relying on the Cypriot media. But in my mind, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to be critical. I mean, it's good to hold even the media accountable. I would like to say a few words. Sorry, that was just, it was part of my presentation, but I had to kind of sidestep it. So just to say a few words about the Cyprus News Agency, for those of you who are not aware, we are the national news agency in Cyprus. We operate under a board of directors. We're a semi-governmental organization. There's a legislation governing us that states that we are independent. And we have a news, all the media in Cyprus are our subscribers, so we are a source of information. We are not allowed to express an opinion. We are not allowed to make conclusions, our own conclusions. Evie, I'm not allowed to say, oh, well, I didn't quite like this when I write something. So, and that's why other media can use us as a source, and then if it's an opinion piece, they can state their opinion, or they can take this and take our material and use it in combination with other material to do like further reporting. What we do, we have about 40 journalists. We have correspondents in Athens, London, Berlin, Moscow, New York, and Israel, if I'm not mistaken. And we rely on our correspondents, obviously, for news from around the world. But we also have commercial agreements with Reuters and the Agence France Presse, the French press agency, and of course an agreement with the Athenian press agency. And that's how we try to keep the Cypriot public informed about what's happening everywhere else. I wanted to speak a bit about the role of journalism and the media in general in the democracy. Nicoli said very rightly so that our job, the job of journalists are to protect, and the media is to protect public interest. I mean, how should they do that? By reporting facts and not fiction. I mean, that's the first. That is to say, either when you're writing something, you should have either witnessed it, you should have the proof of what was said, of what happened, okay? Or if you're writing a report based on sources, on a source, then you have to make sure that your source is reliable, okay? The most important, I suppose, aspect of journalism is fact-checking. And also, another important aspect is to be informed about what you write, so that you can know that others can rely on that material. And this, I believe, is something more and more difficult when newsrooms are often understaffed and are called on to manage a greater load of work. So it's easy to shoot the messenger, but sometimes the messenger is overwhelmed. I think that's about it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evie. I think a strong Cyprus news agency contributes to a strong media environment, which also contributes to a sustainable and healthy democracy, liberal democracy. So long may it continue. Thank you for that. Despite the problems we have, like every country. So I want to now give the floor to Marianna Karageorgis, who is head of the Liaisons Officers section at the Press and Information Office at the Ministry of Interior in Cyprus. Yeah. And I think Marianna also has a short video
Yes.
for us. And Marianna, don't worry, we have time. You know, it's okay
yes,
if we
of
go a
course.
bit over, so no
I have to
worries.
say that I feel very privileged because I'm the last who's going to speak, and I have a very important message to convey. I'm Marianna Karageorgis, and I work for the Press and Information Office. I deal with journalists. I work with journalists the past 21 years, and I have to admit that I admire the job they are doing. They have enthusiasm. They have, I mean, they insist on when they want to find out the truth and the information. But today, I'm going to open another horizon to this discussion, and I'm sure that many of you never think about it, that protecting journalists is protecting democracy. Of course, the media is not perfect, it's biased, it can be inaccurate, and sometimes it helps to spread misinformation. However, despite all these weaknesses, the media is still an essential part for our democracy. How do I do this? This one. I will not go through all this because we are all aware that it allows people to be informed. It educates people about important issues, and we know that educated readers are very important for a healthy democracy. It serves also as a platform for public debate where people can discuss a variety of issues and exchange views. It can also promote citizen engagement and promote also how can I say, help people vote also, go to the elections, promote tolerance and understanding of different cultures and perspectives in our society. But the most important of all is it's a vital, for the media, it's a vital role in holding those in power accountable to people. And this, for me, it's the most important. And I will quote here Herman Greg. He is the chief editor of the Times of Malta. He was here in Nicosia a few months ago, and we had a discussion. I will come back to this later. And who said that if journalists don't step in to try to expose what happens behind the scenes, then we will all be in a very difficult and dangerous situation. This means that we have to help journalists to go out there and find the truth for us. Because if they don't do it, then we are all in danger. However, despite this very important role that the journalists play for our society, and I'm talking about the professional journalists, despite this, journalists are under threat all over the world. And I will give you some figures here. This is the latest data from UNESCO. 88 journalists were killed in 2022. This means that last year, every 4 days, one journalist was killed. And we have already 33 journalists killed in this year. And the killings of women journalists rose to 11% in 2021, which was a great increase comparing to 2020. We had this is data from the Council of Europe, 256 attacks against journalists in 2022, and already 145 to date in 2023. So this is not this is a long-standing issue, but threats against journalists have been increasing the last years, and at the same time, freedom of speech decreased in many countries. This can be explained also by the latest developments in last years. Let's say the COVID pandemic, the war, the last war, the online environment, which despite, although it gives a lot of information globally at real time, at the same time provides a fertile ground for many other forms of attacks against journalists, like digital surveillance, hacking, online violence, etc. 180 journalists targeted with spyware in 2021, and we also see an increase of attacks against women, online attacks against women journalists. All those reports that I have next to my data is the reports that provide them. So why am I saying all this? Because all these forms of violence finally have as a result for the journalists to be silenced. Some of them give up also their jobs because they cannot take it anymore. It's being dangerous now to be an investigative journalist. If you want to do your job and find out the truth, it can be very dangerous nowadays. And this is going to be also have results on freedom of speech, and also for our societies, for us, and for the democracy. Let me see. And I will give you an example. In 2017, Daphne Caruana Galizia, a Maltese journalist, was killed. She left her house in the morning, and after a few meters, her car was blew up because she was investigating a political affair, a political scandal. She was investigating corruption cases, and she was killed for this only a few years ago. So the safety of journalists is recognized at the international level as a precondition for freedom and expression and democracy. Journalists are recognized by the European Court of Human Rights as the public watchdogs, but we have to think, what do we do to protect the journalists so they can be the public watchdogs for us, to protect us? I will give you just an example. The Council of Europe launched this year the Journalist Matter campaign for the safety of journalists. This campaign starts now. It will be officially launched next week in Riga, and it will finish in 2027. It has 4 pillars: prevention, protection, prosecution, and raising awareness. And this is very important because even if you have prevention, if you don't have prosecution, you do nothing. Because they have to know that if something happens to them and they go out there and say we have a problem, they have to know that they will be protected and those responsible will be prosecuted. It's very important. So I'm not going to stay in this, but I will tell you that my office, Present Information Office, was one of the first one that as also member, Cyprus is member of the Council of Europe, one of the 46 members. We are engaged. We were engaged at the first minute with this campaign. This is our logo. Journalists Matter for us became our matter. And this is our message. The protection of journalists concerns us all. It's in Greek. Ça nous concerne tous. La protection des journalistes. And we started this campaign last April, and we had a discussion called protecting journalists, protecting democracy. And we had invited, we were honored to have with us a representative from the Council of Europe, Mr. Patrick Penix, who is responsible for Information Society for the Council of Europe. We also had the son of the murdered journalist, Matthew Caruana Galizia, who is a journalist himself, and we also had Mr. Herman Greg, who is the editor-in-chief of the Times of Malta, and who also wrote a play, They Blew Her Up, and this is a theatrical play which deals with the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. This is a photo of the discussion. And the next day, we had, in collaboration with the Nicosia International Festival, we invited all the theatrical play here in Nicosia. This is a scene of the theatrical play. This is not the same, but the car of that blew up with Daphne. And then after the theatrical play, we had also a discussion with the audience, a very touching one and very enlightening discussion. And to spread the message that journalists' safety is our matter, we also prepared a TV spot, which I will show you now. There's no sound. Can I play it now?
It's on mute here. Maybe we have to...
Αυτό είναι δημοκρατία. Αν κινδυνεύουν όσοι εργάζονται για να μεταφέρουν με αντικειμενικότητα μια εργάζονται για να μεταφέρουν με αντικειμενικότητα μια είδηση, δημοσιογράφοι. Με κάποιους συμφωνείς, με κάποιους διαφωνείς. Όμως όλοι έχουν το δικαίωμα να ακουστούν. Αυτό είναι δημοκρατία. Αν κινδυνεύουν όσοι εργάζονται για να μεταφέρουν με αντικειμενικότητα μια είδηση, αν παρεμποδίζεται η ελευθερία της έκφρασης των δημοσιογράφων, τότε δεν διακυβεύεται μόνο το δικαίωμά μας στην πληροφόρηση, αλλά τίθεται σε κίνδυνο η ίδια η δημοκρατία. Journalists matter. Η προστασία των δημοσιογράφων μας αφορά όλους.
So the safety of journalists is essential for democracy. We must all do our part to protect them and to support free and independent media. It's to the benefit of the society, to the benefit of all. In the present Information Office, we strongly believe that the protection of journalists concerns us all. It's our matter, and that protecting the journalists is protecting democracy. We cannot do that without having journalists who are free to speak and investigate for us. Thank you.
The Reporters Without Borders Index and the Freedom House Index both show decreases in press freedom around the world. So campaigns like this one Marianna explained to us are imperative and urgent. It's very important we support the media when and how we can. I know we've gone a bit over time, but I did want to see if you have maybe the most questions, and short questions if you can, and then we'll continue with closing the panel. So you had your hand up first. Okay, you three, but please keep them short if possible. Yes, please go ahead.
So the video will start. The heart of pension protests and Express the Tram, the Pop, and others. They were all fake. They were all AI generated. Thank you. And they were really realistic photos. So what can the media do? What can authorities do to prevent this, in my opinion, new danger for our democracy? Thank you.
Who would like to take this? Does anyone?
it's not only AI, it's other things as well that are new, and honestly, I think that they don't know. They don't know how to handle it or regulate it or contain it, because if you take as an example AI, it spreads with unprecedented speed. It's totally new, and my opinion is that governments and international organizations are not ready to cope with this thing, and we cannot like foresee or calculate how the scenery will be in the next 10, 15 years. Besides AI, metaverse is also on the corner, which is again something that we never saw before. There will be virtual rooms that you will be entering to have discussions, interactions. I know some companies are even trying to revive people that died in virtual rooms and using information from their life, for example, their Facebook account and their Facebook profile. They will reconstruct the person, and you will be able to have dialogue with them in virtual rooms using AI. So really, I think they don't know.
One sentence more. There is an AI Act now. It's going to be start discussion, I think in a couple of months. So there will be an act coming from Brussels, or a recommendation in some form. And then I believe that it's transparency and ethics. If we learn to be ethical, because we all consume use content as well. So disclosing that something is an AI production, this is a step for more democracy, I think, and to prevent from misinterpretations.
Thank you, Antigoni. Next question. Yeah.
So my question is for Ms. Antigoni. I wanted to ask, so I think a couple of years ago, it was reported that a terrorist attack at the London Bridge happened after a series of personal messages on social media, on the personal social media accounts of the perpetrators. And I wanted to ask, how can these attacks and these events be prevented without the human right to privacy being violated?
Good question, thanks. And Evie. So it's something that we still discuss, because what we mentioned earlier about the video sharing platforms, then what is going to be discussed now is that video sharing platforms should use age verification systems to protect children from accessing harmful material, and same technology can be used for protecting the public, the general public. So then the other side, the providers, raise this argument about what if we violate human rights. And this also, there is not a yes or no answer. So we need to take into consideration all the interest and the rights at stake each time, and to decide. For example, if our German colleagues say that, no, if something is in the law, then it should be enforced and should be implemented, so they don't pay attention about privacy rights. And this is an expression that was said in a meeting. We don't care about privacy and private rights. And then at the same meeting, we had our French colleagues that they are very vocal in terms of protecting privacy and private rights. So it depends also on the context, on the mentality of the society. So in Cyprus, we try to find a balance. It's tough, but we do our best.
Yeah. Yes.
But that journalists are also citizens.
Yeah. And the last question, yes.
The panel seems to have distinguished between professional journalists that are usually affiliated with a major media organization or even a minor media organization, and independent, untrained reporters, not leaving aside influencers. But and that professional journalists are assumedly more reliable. Yet those who rely on professional journalists solely because of the authority of their organization or their training have also been misled, as major news organizations have either been co-opted by the state or been or affiliated with a political party, or simply make mistakes and don't vet their stories, whereas people turn to these untrained reporters as not having the same biases, not having the same editorial ceiling or editorial controls. Is the issue really about the authority of professional journalists versus the amateurishness of non-professional reporters, or should we be focusing more on media literacy by citizens to be able to assess, yes, I see what organization this person is with, I respect it, I respect the training, but look at this person who is reporting independently in a very heavily state-controlled environment. So where should the emphasis be?
If I may, I don't think anybody has anything against somebody who reports independently, as long as they're doing it properly, as long as they're, as I said before, fact-checking, making sure that what they write is actually true. As far as respected media outlets, whether people should trust them, I mean, you build that trust. Yes, mistakes can happen, and they can happen to anybody. And what is important is for this mistake to be recognized. I mean, often I will see even on Reuters, which is a major outlet, they will issue corrections. We said, well, I don't know, 52% on this, but it wasn't. It was whatever. I mean, you know, we're all human until AI takes over, of course.
Well, I completely agree with what you say. I think the problem is not between real journalists, professional journalists, and what we call in France street journalists operating on social networks. The question is, effectively, are they serious? Do they operate with ethic rules? So you have very bad professional journalists in medias. You have very good independent journalists. The question is how to control that they respect ethical rules. And the answer is that they are under the law and under the control of a regulatory authority like the Arcom. And the problem is with the street journalists on social networks is that they are not controlled by anybody. This is a real problem. After that, they do what they want. It's not a problem. We are free. We are in democracy. But when you say that you are a journalist, you have to respect the rules.
Okay, I think we can call it a wrap. I want to apologize for going a bit over time. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank the Cyprus Forum for organizing this fantastic event. And of course, to thank all of the panelists for being here and for the work they do. Thank you, everyone.